Hey everybody, welcome to Studio 21. I'm Tim Starace, and this right here is Andrew Barta.
Hello.
Hey Andrew, how you doing, man? We're going to talk about the SansAmp Classic and some of the other models that evolved from that. And Andrew's going to offer us some insight on how it all happened and some cool stories.
Right. So this is the Classic. Actually, this is the one we're going to release.
Yes.
Very soon. But I brought some oldies but goodies. I have one number 14. I didn't know why 14. It just so happens
Good number.
that I kept one. And we get sometimes calls that it has funny knobs on this. Let me show you. These knobs, right? And is this original? Well, the very first ones had these knobs. Interesting story. I didn't know where to buy knobs, so I called up DOD at the time, and I said, like, can you sell me knobs? So these are actually DOD knobs.
Oh,
they,
yeah?
They were really nice. You know, sold me like 1,000 knobs and, you know, put it on. And the first one were really made by hand, started in the kitchen, you know, and then with one employee on 30th Street. And we even started to cell screen them, but I gave up really quick because we had a lot of rejects and it was a pain in the ass. Yellow paint all over. Yeah. So these very early ones, that's how they look like. There's no switch here either.
Right.
On the later models, we introduced the bass switch and the lead and a normal. So that's expanded the palette. But so that was the first one. And it's still working, I think. I have the manual. It's a really nice manual. I'll show you. It's written by a typewriter. You remember those things?
Oh gosh, you gotta get a shot of that.
It's like that.
Wow.
Right? And then photocopied. It's a little yellow.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
That
So
really is cool.
That's the history of it. 89. That's when it became commercially available. And at the time, that was the first going direct thing. And I felt that people should hear, you know, going direct like different amp sounds, because that's what it's all about. I needed it for myself, and it took like 10 years to develop because I did other things in between. And when I felt that this is a good product to put on the market, I did. But there was not much interest, I have to tell you that. Like I walked in, yeah?
That's a good story. I've heard it, and you've told it to me. And why don't you tell everybody else how that happened?
Well, you know, the first prototype, actually I showed it to Mick Jones from Foreigner because I was doing some Marshall mods for them at the time. And he really liked it, didn't even want to give it back to me. And I mentioned, like, you know, the dip switches were on it just so you can get your sound. And he said, no, that's the best feature, leave it on. So we left it on. And then finally we had the final look of the product. And I walked into Sam Ash on 48th Street. I say, like, buy this. And they were laughing like you.
Yeah, right, yeah, buy this.
So
Make your deal.
I was like, at that time, this was like $300. And there were no pedals ever, like in that price range.
Yeah.
So that was actually the first boutique pedal too.
Yeah.
And so they wouldn't buy it. But there were some nice people there, you know, and they liked it. So I convinced them to take it as a consignment. And sure enough, next day they sold it.
Really?
And the first couple of customers were like Def Leppard, Kiss, and, you know, you name it, all the studio guys. So then they said, okay, we'll order 6. And then after that, order 20, and it just started to build from there. And then I had one of the salesmen who worked with them called me that, oh, I want to represent the product. So it became national. And after that, we started to put ads in the paper. Then it became international. I got calls from England that we want to sell this. So it was a real need for it. But it was a slow start, but then it's really just picked up really nicely.
Yeah. Well, SansAmp has become a household name, you know, for musicians.
Well, it's on your T-shirt.
Yeah, it's on my T-shirt too.
But actually, the original idea for the SansAmp was born when I was 13 in high school, that I used to play my electric through my father's radio.
Yeah.
And of course, it doesn't sound good. Like you put a distortion on it, and as a tweeter, it says really weird upper harmonics. So I started to experiment with how to make that disappear and make it sound like more like an amplifier.
Yeah.
And I experimented with different type of distortions to emulate the distortion of an amp. So it's not just a regular distortion pedal. And so that's what took like a long time to keep developing and coming up with like a speaker simulator. There was no previous art on that, how to build a speaker sim.
Yeah. All you had was distortion pedals or fuzz pedals.
Right.
You know,
that's
just that type of circuit.
That's it.
You know.
And you know, like nowadays you go on the internet, you put in speaker sim and you get a bunch of
Yeah.
products, schematics, literature. Back then there was no internet.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
There were a couple books, you know, on music electronics, and that's it. So you had to like pretty much come up with your own plan and how to make this.
Yeah. So Andrew, growing up in Europe, how hard was it to find the resources and the parts and stuff to do this type of experimentation to design the SansAmp?
Well, that's an interesting story because actually I grew up behind the Iron Curtain. So we had to find parts like in a surplus store. There was no like, you go and buy resistors or capacitors. You just had to like go through a bunch of things in boxes and find things. So you had to like kind of adapt to that and use whatever you could find.
Wow.
And I remember like my first project was like a phaser. Like I built like from parts that I could find, and then, you know, building some distortions and all that. So it was quite adventurous. And then when I moved to Germany, they actually had like electronic stores there that you could walk in, and it's like, I need these resistors. So it became a little bit more, you know, easier available. And then when I came to America, here you can get everything.
Yeah.
And especially now with the internet and UPS, you know, next day you get all the parts. So it's really so much easier now.
So some of those early prototypes that you built could actually be descendants of large commercial refrigerators or tanks.
Actually, military equipment mostly.
Yeah.
Because behind the Iron Curtain, we were like, the Russians were all there, and you know, like all the you know, radios for military and stuff, you know, that they took apart. So yeah, we used a lot of that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah. Just knowing that little fact.
It's like you know, Mike Matthews from Electro-Harmonics, he has like those distortions made in Russia with Russian parts.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So our stuff kind of looked like that. Yeah.
Pretty neat, man.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So you got it plugged in.
Yeah, so let's show it.
Could you do a quick little...
So the idea is like when you go direct, right? And then you put the SansAmp on and it's like... Oh, wow. You can get that amp sound, you know, that is not fuzz, not overdrive or distortion, but the amp sound.
Right.
So this is a smooth, you know, like lead sound.
Yeah.
And that's what was missing, because, you know, like you could get like a really heavy metal, like really fuzzy thing, you know, going.
Right.
But that smooth amp sound, going direct, it was unheard of at the time.
Yeah. The one thing I notice about SansAmp products, you know, because I was a big fan long before I got to join the club here.
Right.
And was just how organic it felt when I played.
Yeah.
It hurt.
Well, that's one thing I cannot...
It felt organic.
I can't show that, how it feels.
I noticed some magic in there.
This is like a cooking show, you know, that I can show you how to make it and all that, but you cannot taste it.
Right. But that was one of the biggest things that drew me into it. Is like it sounded like an amp. It's just a little box, you know.
Right. Well, that's why it's called SansAmp.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
It was very organic and flowing and analog. Just really felt good to play.
Yep.
You know. So this one has all the dip switches, right?
That's the dip switches, and the problem was with the dip switches, it gives you 256 options.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, number one, didn't understand how to properly do it, although we tried to explain in the manual. The other one was hard to get to it. We actually designed it that you use your pick.
Right.
You know, and but it was still hard. So that's what gave me the idea to come up with the GT2.
That was my next question.
Because the GT2, basically what it did, let's put it here so everybody can see it, is we put like an amp selector switch, so you had the 3 most recognizable amp sound,
Right.
like California is for the boogie style, then the British is for, I'm asking you.
For the Fender or the Vox. For what?
British is the Marshall.
Oh, the Marshall.
Oh, you're a bass player, I forgot.
I'm a bass player.
Oh
I don't
my
know from
God.
Marshall. Right? Come on. But I love Marshall.
Yeah. And the last one, Tweed, that's the Fender.
That's the Fender. Okay.
Style. We always say style because obviously we don't have an actual Fender Twin in there.
Right,
But
well,
it's in that style. Now you
Some
can-
people would think so.
Well,
You know,
actually,
I know plenty of
Mick
people
Jones
think
said that.
Oh, yeah?
In the first ad, we had that, like, at least I can carry my Marshall in my pocket. Because he was
Exactly.
he's from England, so he was a huge Marshall fan. And this was the first product that
Yeah.
when he was writing songs at home, you know, late at night, he could just plug it in and,
Right.
you know, and create. As a matter of fact, the other one is one of my idols is AC/DC, and they bought the classic directly from us.
Really?
And unfortunately, I was in Europe at the time, so my colleagues went to see the show and hand delivered
Oh,
it
wow.
to them. Same with ZZ Top.
Yeah.
When they were at Meadowlands, you know.
That's pretty neat.
And we actually got money for it too. So believe it
Whoa.
or not, these big guys are willing to come up with the cash.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, so getting back to this, you can modify your amp, and then you can choose your mic position. Then you have how much overdrive and tone controls and level. So this was greatly simplifying the process. As a matter of fact, I can plug it in.
Right. Yeah. The one thing I noticed about that is you don't have all the options that you have on the Classic.
Right.
But you just hit the button and it sounds great. You're already in the ballpark for something. It's a little easier to dial in.
Right. And what the other idea is that this was like several years later, and the musical style changed.
Yeah.
So the Classic was more like classic rock, and this was more like you know, modern rock at the time.
Right.
Which was like, you know, late 90s and like more you know, heavier overdrive and more
Right.
hair on the top.
Oh, wow. That sounds great.
Of course, I have a Strat, so this one
Yes.
has a different sounds, but you can see also it cleans up really nice.
And I'll touch on that again.
Yeah.
What I notice about the SansAmp stuff is when I set my sound and I play lightly, it reacts.
Right.
It reacts like an amplifier. You know,
It's a
until
funny
I dig in
yeah.
and, you know, it emulates squeezing those tubes.
It's a funny
into
story.
submission.
Like I did the interview with Geddy Lee.
Yeah.
And I asked him to play.
Jealous.
Was that?
I'm jealous.
Well, you're next.
Woo!
So I asked him to play softly to show the dynamics. He said, I don't do that.
Yeah. Well,
Because he always digs in.
yeah. My bandmate Billy tells me that all the time.
Yeah, that-
you know,
that you-
I have one dynamic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But, you know, but in all honesty, though, I'm really happy about that because there are some, especially live, you know, because live I can't dial in anything else while I'm playing. You know, and when we have a softer section of a song that I really don't need that animal
Right, so
attack,
just-
you know, I just play a little lighter and it responds just like an amp would.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, that's the idea.
It's natural.
And I feel a lot of time like modern processors, like digital processors, don't have that for some reason. As you said, it's the feel.
Yes,
You
it's
play
all
through
about
it,
the
and you
feel.
just don't feel the same way you feel
Right.
about the amp.
And if it feels good when I'm playing,
Then you
it
play better.
sounds good and I play better, and it's just really cool stuff. And you know, I find that I haven't turned my amps on in I could say going on a year.
Right.
You know, now that we're not touring, due to the situation. But at home, I'll just turn my SVTs on once every 6 months just to let myself know they're still there.
Right.
But it's
And warm up the room in
yeah.
winter time.
Yeah. If I want some real humming going on, But
Yeah.
these things are just great. They're amps in a box.
Thanks.
So the GT2 came along, and what was next?
Oh, well, I'm not sure if the bass driver was before or after, but if you notice, like the original Classic didn't have a switch on it,
Right.
which we brought in later, okay? And one of the position is bass.
Right.
And we heard like stories like Michael Anthony from Van Halen is using it on bass.
Yeah.
We knew that Jason Newsted used our product on bass. Actually, that was probably the XXL. But we knew that people are looking for this
Yeah.
with bass. So then I was thinking, like, we should create a bass-specific product. And that was the bass driver.
And that was a very good idea, by the way.
Thank you. And it's used the same technology because you have to understand, amplifiers are basically the same DNA. There's like only slight differences between like a guitar amp and a bass amp. Usually with the speaker cabinet, you need different kind of speakers and some of the preamp parts, you know, to have the lower frequencies, you know, going through in a different way. But 98% is the same.
Yes.
So we already had like a nice amp simulator, so we just had to adapt that for the bass.
Yeah. You did a good job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then we made the rack mount products. Then we had requests for something that can remember programs, so you can easily recall settings.
Programmable.
So then that's when the PSA came in, programmable SansAmp.
Yep.
And it just became like a ton of different products, you know, specializing.
I liked when you were talking about like ZZ Top and, you know, Michael Anthony, you know, and Mick Jones. And, you know, it's amazing, you know, when you start hearing how many major acts and studios actually have this stuff in their studios. It's like a staple. You know?
Well, it has to do with being original in the first.
Yeah.
It's like a Coca-Cola, you know, it's so many copies of that, but Coca-Cola is still number one, and that's the real thing, as they say it, right?
Yeah.
Or Levi's, which I have on.
Yep.
And I feel that we were lucky enough to be there at the right place at the right time, just when the home recording exploded, and the big studios were still in business. Nowadays, a lot of studios closing up because there's not enough business.
Right. And anyone can record at home these days.
Exactly.
Practically.
But you still need good equipment, and that's where we come in, because of course you can record your bass or guitar in many different ways, but to get that feel we were talking about, we feel that we have something special to offer.
Right. Yeah, well, you know, like I said, I use the racks to record primarily.
Right.
You know, I tour with the pedals, and I wouldn't get better results in a sound studio with amps cranked up.
Well, you tried. Right?
I've tried.
And it takes a long time. That's where I developed the original, because we used to spend like half a day just to get a good guitar sound with the cabinet, everything. And we were booked by the hour, and by the time you got a good sound, you were done.
Where my knobs go are not affected by humidity, room size, you know, what type of wall treatments there are, whether the microphone's this or that.
Right. And especially with bass, it's so important. And you always have something rattling and something, you know, making a funny noise, and where is it coming from? So you totally can get rid of that problem.
And then, you know, 20 minutes after my amp warms up, it sounds different. You know.
Yeah.
So, you know. Playing live, you know, what's really cool about, like, I'm just going to say the bass driver, you know, is that you can go to these Coliseum shows with walls of amplifiers behind the band, and it's so cool to see that what's really coming out to the crowd through the PA is, you know, a SansAmp bass driver. It's the heart of the whole thing.
Well, actually, now that you mentioned, I always think of Geddy Lee with the washing machines behind him, and then another tour, he changed the washing machine to like a rotisserie chicken.
The Hen House Chicken Roasters.
There you go. So, you know, the man has some humor, you know.
Popcorn machine.
But the truth is that he was going direct through our product and through like 100,000 watts.
Yes.
And guess what? That's the best amp in the world.
Yeah.
The PA system. There's no amp can sound as deep as in your face.
Can't.
So when you go direct, you're really utilizing the best of the PA.
Yeah. It just neat.
And same with guitars. You know, we find out that Rammstein was using, you know, the GT2 going direct for the huge, you know, concerts that they're doing. And later on, we hooked up with Paul, and he asked us to make a custom fly rig for him.
The PL1.
Yeah, which we did. And, you know, hopefully they're going to go back on tour after this craziness is over.
I think it's coming.
And then you're going to hear that one through like 100,000
Oh,
watts.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to touch back bases with the SansAmp Classic,
Yeah.
Kurt Cobain has been photographed with
Yes. He
one
had
on
6
more than
of
one
these.
occasion. 6?
Yeah, because he was notorious of kicking them around. And we actually used to fix them. The foot switch is the only part that can break because it's mechanical.
Yeah.
Right? On the Classic. On
Right.
the other ones, we have a different technology.
Yes.
But the Classic, we kept it, mechanical. So that's the first thing breaks. Always
Right,
the
yeah,
mechanical
right.
parts. So his tech used to always like call us almost every week. It's like, I have another one for you. And because, you saw him on stage, he went
Yeah,
nuts and
yeah.
smash everything and
Yeah.
kick everything. So yeah, he
Perhaps
had
an
6 of
adult
them.
beverage or two would fall on it. Yeah. You know.
Yeah. And many other bands at the time, once it's they find out about some cool new products, then everybody wants to have
Oh,
one.
yeah. Uh-huh.
So like till this day, like I know that Kiss is using several of our products. They use it on bass.
Oh, yeah.
They use our bass amps. Then we saw many bands actually use like stack of amps, but they use our SansAmp as a backup. So
Mm-hmm. Oh,
when
yeah.
they fry or blow up, there is not even a second missing because they run several channels.
Right.
And the SansAmp is running parallel with the amps.
Right. Yeah.
Like Kiss, I know that the guitar players, they always had a backup with the SansAmp.
Yeah. I know Gene uses the 1969s, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
A couple of those.
Yeah,
And,
and also the smaller one. We have a smaller one, and when they have lighter gigs and he travels, we just posted something on Instagram.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Oh, the VT500.
That's
When
right.
they played the New Year's Eve show in Dubai.
Right, there you
right,
go.
Right, right,
That's the one.
There was a picture of him.
So he's a couple of those.
Yep.
Yeah.
With a VT500 on top of a 810. Sideways. Yeah, it was some
So,
pretty cool stuff.
we are dropping names here, but it's
Hey.
cool. I'm really proud of that because when I was growing up, I looked up to these people like it was unreachable dream
Yeah.
to even to talk to them or anything. And now, I was able to make products that they use.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
makes me really proud.
Another really cool bass sound that I remember from live, is like Duff McKagan. His bass always sounds great. He uses an RBI.
Oh, okay.
And
9-inch nails.
Yep. Les Claypool.
Oh, Les
PSA,
Claypool,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Les Paul.
And of course, Les Paul.
Yeah, Les Paul was another of my idols.
He loved the amps.
Was that?
He loved the amp, right?
Yeah, he had the amp. And I remember when I was like 12 or 13, I got this brochure from somebody that had Les Pauls on it. And they were such beautiful guitars. And I put it right next to my bed on the wall. So I used to fall asleep looking at that. I could never afford one. It was more than several years of salary where I was growing up. I was lucky enough actually to buy a Telecaster when I was like about 15 or 16. Somebody was selling it like, really cheap. It was still like a year worth of salary, but that was actually cheap. So that was my first
But it was
serious
worth it,
guitar.
right?
I still have it. It's upstairs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
See, that's great.
Yeah.
That's cool. I got a question for you. How do you decide what to design next?
Well, I read all the warranty cards, first of all, and there are like a lot of different ideas, but you start to see it's like a picture takes shape when a lot of people ask for the same thing. There are wacky ideas, there are ideas that somebody already did. We always try to do something that has a twist on it or unique.
Right.
So it takes a while, and many times, as I said, something I want.
Right.
I enjoy something, like to play through, and it's like, oh, that's cool.
And that shows in the products.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah. And then, talking to people like you, like yourself, people who play, not necessarily like A-list, like with stadiums, but you guys are the driving engine of the industry because you playing the smaller gigs, you travel, you record, and like you have the best ideas because you need something that is
learn
really
out of
usable.
necessity.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what it is. What works and what
When you
doesn't.
have a roadie who can put together a rack full of stuff for you
Yep.
and you don't even have to know how to use it,
But
that's a different story.
After the 15th show of that, I'm tired of it. I just want to plug my SansAmp
Something
pedal
simple,
in.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just great. It sounds great. No, seriously, I mean, I used to have racks. I used to run an RBI RPM, dual signals, blah, blah, you know, in all these club shows. And then after a while, it just got so tiresome. And I found that I could get the same sound just from, you know, a power drive.
And you know, another
Yeah, it's
great
beautiful.
way of coming up with new ideas is the way we worked with Geddy, is that he was using the RBI and then the RPM, and then his tech called and said that, you know, we're thinking that he has this whole rack. There's a bunch of other things in there, and maybe we could just make one product
Right.
that has all that in that one product to simplify.
Right.
Because he was doing like the introduction to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for Yes.
Yes.
And yes.
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 And Geddy was
In a roundabout way.
right. And Geddy was playing
Sorry,
bass
folks.
with Yes. Unfortunately, we lost Chris Squire.
Yeah.
And that was a perfect example.
Yeah.
By that time, the prototype was ready, so they took it, and his sound was right at his fingertip.
sounded
He
great.
didn't have to take anything else,
Yeah.
just his bass and this rack. And actually, his tech told us the story that they were actually shocked. You know, like the whole band, Yes, and the techs. It's like, that's all you have?
Yeah.
And he said, just wait.
That little
And he
seafoam
plugged it
green
in.
rack.
He plugged it in, and they were all amazed, like the sound he
Yeah.
got. And you can actually look it up on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
And
I
you
have.
can hear the sound is just pretty amazing, and he's playing
killer.
that roundabout song, which is really like it's a
It's an
nicely
iconic
driven
bass tone and
yeah.
iconic bass
And
line
he's playing a jazz bass
with his fingers.
with his fingers that is supposed to be a Rickenbacker
Yeah.
with a pick,
Yes, exactly.
but
yeah.
it's working.
Yeah, it worked. That's what's great about it. Now, since you mentioned replacing a whole rack of stuff with one pedal, what really shoots into my mind is the Doug, the DP3X.
Right.
Because his rig was insane.
Right.
You know, didn't he have like a flip top and compressors and
Right.
EQs and
Right.
you know, rack mount, Ampeg. You know, he had a rack like this of stuff to get that sound.
Yep. Yeah, and he
two
told
racks.
me, well, we were lucky enough to run into him at the NAMM show, and he was one of my idols as well.
Totally.
And I was like, introduce me. Like, I want to talk to the guy. So we were talking, and he said, like, you know, like he had so much trouble because when you have so much equipment, something always
know.
goes
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah.
And the other problem was that when he moves around stage, the mix changes because
Right.
he was running bi-amp system.
Exactly, yeah.
So you get more highs or more lows in certain spots. So it drove him crazy. So I offered my help, and he graciously accepted it. Not only that, but he shared it with us, all these little secrets how to
Yeah.
get that tone. And then we were able to, first we built the amp for him, and then we squeezed all this down to one little pedal,
Yeah.
which is great because it's actually the same kind of idea what Chris Squire had,
Oh, yeah.
and also the bass player from Cheap Trick,
Mm-hmm.
Tom
Tom
Peterson.
Yep.
And many other bass players that to keep the low end nice and tight and clean, and the high
Mm-hmm. Geddy as
end
well.
was that
Geddy as well, to an extent.
right?
Yeah.
But Geddy does it in a different way.
It's almost like two full frequency
Yeah.
channels that Geddy uses.
Mix it
Yeah.
together,
But Chris
and
Squire,
no compression.
Right.
Yeah.
But Chris Squire it definitely comes to mind when you say.
Well, he was the
bi-amp
original.
rig.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was the
yeah.
original of that, and Doc told me the story when he saw him
Yeah.
live, and then he was looking at the equipment,
Yeah, yeah.
and he got his
That's
ideas.
how you do
but
it.
he developed something else from it.
Yeah.
It's just like how rock and roll was developed from the blues and R&B, and it's the same basic chords,
Right.
but becomes something
Yeah.
different. So a good artist able to do that is
Absolutely.
to copy something first, but then change it to his own flavor.
Well, Andrew, this has been a lot of fun, and it's really cool to hear the story of how you got your inspiration, how you started. I'm excited for the reissue of the SansAmp Classic, and I'm excited for a lot of stuff this year.
Yeah.
I really had a blast.
And more is coming out.
Yes.
But we are very tightly about these things because we learned it the hard way that there are a lot of people who looking at what we are doing and they making their own version of it
Right.
or copying it.
Yep.
I have some example of that too. So we wait to the last minute.
Yes, that's the way to do it.
Okay, well,
Cool.
till next time.
Yep, till next time. All right, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.